All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Jesse Johnson. I also go by Golden Cross in the Gotchiverse and the wider metaverse. I am very pleased to be continuing this series, Aavegotchi Explores DAO Tooling. This is our second in the series. The first one, we explored basically project management solutions for Web3 with dWork. Today, we're going to be with Dr. Nick from FactoryDAO, and I couldn't be more pleased to explore what this means for DAOs, including Aavegotchi DAO, but also much beyond that. And what they've accomplished over at FactoryDAO is a quite powerful system, but there's actually more to it that beyond the platform, there's also just a lot of human resources and knowledge and wisdom I think we can get from Dr. Nick. So real briefly, we'll start today by looking at what is Aavegotchi if you're tuning in for the first time, and then we will get right to it and get some alpha from Dr. Nick. So basically, Aavegotchi is an open source, community owned NFT gaming protocol. And it's a bit of a mouthful, but what it really means is we started with the NFTs. These are not your average PFPs. They are super powerful, on chain in every way, from dynamic metadata to actually being like a piggy bank and holding ERC20 token balances inside the Aavegotchis. And then when it comes to the DAO side, these are your avatars for interacting and gaining reputation within the wider Aavegotchi DAO ecosystem. That's accomplished in a number of ways. One is experience points. So just like your favorite RPGs, your Aavegotchi can earn XP if you're voting in the DAO or participating in various community events. You have the potential to earn XP points for the Aavegotchis that are in your wallet. And so that's one way the Aavegotchis actually level up and signal to people that this is an Aavegotchi that has accrued a bit of a history on the social and governance side. The other way is going back to something like a POAP badge. A little known fact is an Aavegotchi can actually have 1155 NFTs that are like proof of experience badges deposited directly into those Aavegotchis. These are super unique. Sometimes they're one of one. And what they do is they give, over a long enough period of time, a very unique history to that particular avatar. And by virtue, then, by extension, the owner is somehow related to that to some extent. And so this is the basis of Aavegotchi DAO. The whole Aavegotchi project is over 2.5 years old now, and it started from day one as a DAO with the governance token GHST being issued on a bonding curve on Ethereum layer 1. Now the Aavegotchis and most of the governance, live and thrive on Polygon as one of the most active DAOs on the entire blockchain. If you look at our snapshot records, if you look at our engagement on socials and our number of proposals, you'll find that the Aavegotchi DAO is extremely active because we're building a video game together, actually many video games together. And so that's a very different premise for a DAO compared to maybe your average central bank and things like that. So with that said, the community is also looking to move through our DAO roadmap and mature into what we consider DAO version 2. And what we want to have there is more infrastructure, more support from the composability opportunities across the ecosystem, the EVM ecosystem. And that's why we want to reach out and learn directly from some of our peers in the space that are doing great things. And this can benefit Aavegotchi DAO directly. And like I said, it can also benefit the wider ecosystem, anyone tooling in that wants to understand and connect with great projects and great teams building in the decentralized governance space. So with that said, I would like to welcome a person who has been very influential for a long time when it comes to decentralized governance, online coordination, Dr. Nick, and he is the founder of FactoryDAO and so much more. So with that, I'd like to welcome him, and so glad to have you with us, Dr. Nick.
Thanks very much, Jesse. Very nice intro. Yeah, I love what you guys are doing at Aavegotchi. Very, very cool stuff. Hard to keep a sort of really engaged community throughout this sort of period, and you're doing great stuff. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And we also likewise, I've been following you on Twitter. I believe your Twitter handle is Dr. Nick, maybe with a few numbers or hashes or something like that.
Dr. Nick A.
You have great Dr. Nick
A. Yeah.
Wonderful. Everyone should follow him. You have great content, great insights, and that's actually what caught my attention before I was even really digging into FactoryDAO. I just was like, okay, Dr. Nick knows what's up when it comes to DAOs, and you aren't kidding. So I want to start maybe by just, before we get into the platform and what FactoryDAO is about, a bit about your background and what the context is that informs why you have such a solid foundation when it comes to governance. You know, one thing I saw you, I think, tweeting about or discussing at one point was like prediction markets. And when I first discovered DAOs, actually, that's where my journey started, was some of these early, going back to like the 1990s, these experiments with like Hansen and some of them with what is possible with governance through prediction markets. And
Yes.
I think you could explain this much better than me, but this is kind of where that journey started. And I was quite interested to see, it looked like you also have some background there.
Yeah, so we actually started, when I sort of jumped into the space full time, it was to build a prediction market, which is finance.vote and is still functional. I'll when we dig into the screen sharing, I'll give you a little insight on a little bit more detail into that. In terms of my background, I'm a doctor because I did a PhD in physics well over 10 years ago now. So started in physics and stayed in that for about 10 years. And then over time moved into different branches of academia. I went into mathematics, where I taught cryptography for a bit, which is where I discovered sort of Bitcoin in the very early days. And then over time, I drifted into this kind of governance role of having to work in large institutions. And I actually built a decentralized organization in an institution in about 2012, 2013. So I came in via decentralized organizations. Well, DAOs were still a twinkle in Vitalik's eyes.
Absolutely, 2012. I just want to emphasize that. That is very pre-Ethereum.
I mean, decentralized organizations as an idea have been around for like very, very long time. And they've always been a kind of, as a governance paradigm, it's always been a kind of a thing. We built it to basically as a kind of professional development thing inside of the institution, where I sort of picked up the responsibility for having to train the teachers across the university, train the academics to teach, and academics don't like being trained or told what to do. So
tough job.
And I hated it as well. So I was in this position of doing the thing that I hated myself. So I basically said, okay, you teach yourselves in this decentralized organization. So you kind of self-organize. And we had proposal structures very similar to what we use in DAOs these days that funded different domain-specific tasks and so on. And yeah, so after a while, that worked. It made the sort of university better, and then the DAO happened, and I sort of realized, hold on a minute, we can finally take decentralized organizations onto the internet, and it's going to change the world. And since that moment, I've just been completely down the rabbit hole on trying to realize the DAO vision since about 2016. Got very into sort of token economics for a little bit and designing token systems throughout the sort of 2017-18 cycle. And then in 2020, just at the tail end of DeFi summer, we launched finance.vote, and I finally left academia after like nearly 20 years. And now I've been sort of full-time DJing for the last 2 years. It's been quite a wild ride.
Must feel great. Graduated
it does.
DJ.
It's different. There's benefits to being inside the nice cozy academic environment. But yeah, it feels good to be, working on what I love, and finally doing the DAO thing full time has been great.
So you mentioned finance.vote, and that seems like it was a prediction market, tangibly related to governance. So maybe we start there. It makes sense to explain a bit more about that, understand finance.vote, what the goals are there, what's happening, and then maybe how that ties into FactoryDAO. And
yes,
FactoryDAO, very briefly, that might be of more interest for everyone who's looking to build, founders out there. people looking to self-organize, right? That's a lot of tooling structures you have there seem very useful for various purposes. So can't wait to get to that part. But yeah,
Yes.
What about finance.vote?
So yeah, so we sort of launched in November 2020, and I've always had this, you know, for me, decentralized organization will end up at this idea of kind of futarchy, where instead of kind of we vote on everything, market forces and sort of game theory takes over, and you can get to these like really interesting governance minimized DAOs where people are kind of acting as self-interested economic actors, and essentially making predictions about decisions, whether they were good ones or not. So really the idea of finance.vote was, can we build a prediction market where people bet or essentially vote, actually. So we built a quadratic voting system to do this. So normally a prediction market is Bitcoin going to be above 30K on this date, yes or no? And they're kind of binary decisions. Whereas what we've done is built a quadratic voting system where each NFT, I think we were one of the first to do NFT governance. Each NFT has a budget of voting power, and you can vote on which assets you think are going to perform over a period of time. At the moment, it's running on, we did it initially on a basket of DeFi tokens, which all kind of moved together. But now we've just redeployed it on the macro market environment. So our users are voting on a basket of stuff which has crypto, commodities, stocks, and a few different fiat currencies in. And the goal is to kind of, can we predict the macro market flows? And yeah, I'll show you this in a second when I share the screen, but we've just basically predicted it right for the last few days in a row, which is starting to get probabilistically unlikely to be happened by random chance. And yeah, so the old goal of that was, okay, some people are good at predicting, some aren't. And can we filter out the good predictors from the bad? So we use SBTs as voting identities, all of
soulbound tokens.
Soulbound tokens. And everyone's on predictions are recorded on chain. So we can validate that user is a good predictor or not. And then the end goal is to basically, can you assign rights to those good predictors to manage a treasury? So it's a way you sort of decentralize DAO treasuries, if you like, by getting people proven to understand the market context and give them the rights to be able to trade the treasury, to hedge it when the market's going down, go long on various tokens when the market's going up, and so on.
So if I could stop you there, I think what you're describing is something that took time. It's taken time to get to this point where basically reputation is being accrued by the participants.
Exactly. I mean, so this has been the dream of mine. So it sort of dawned on me quite early into my sort of DAO research that what we needed was decentralized sources of reputation in order to actively decentralize the power in DAOs. Like, we need to be able to say, this actor is better at doing this than this other actor, so they should have greater decision-making power.
Based on on-chain success, based on actual...
which is why prediction markets is the starting point, because there's not many things you can find objective, like on-chain oracles for. So actually the only thing we've really got at the moment is Chainlink and associated similar price oracles. So basically it's the most objective data we've got for deriving on-chain reputation. So that's why, vote on the performance of these basket of assets is the start to the reputation layer, in my view. Our goal is...
does this relate to like wisdom of the crowds? This is one of the ideas
it does.
Kind of...
Yes.
This seems to be like a curation of the wisdom of the crowds, so to speak, or
precisely
an improvement on it.
So yeah, I got very obsessed on this idea of collective intelligence. I was a learning theorist in that kind of whole jumble of stuff when I was an academic for quite a few years. And yeah, I got really sold on this idea that collectively people can solve problems more effectively than they can in a centralized way. So if everyone's got their own subjective idea on something, and then you find a way to aggregate everyone's opinions as much as possible, there's going to be some signal in there that you would probably outperform a centralized committee. So a lot of what we're trying to do with Finance.vote is essentially find the mechanisms for aggregating collective intelligence and deriving the signal. Like, crowds aren't wise. It's a bit of a wisdom of the crowds. Crowds aren't wise, but there is signal in there that can be curated out of it. So curation's the right word.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I was intellectually, it's very interesting to think about, and it instinctually also seems there's something there. And it really is not the right term when people use wisdom of the crowds, because crowds are chaotic. They're quite the opposite of wisdom when you get a big mob, right? If it goes from crowd to mob. But
there's people in the crowd who are worth listening to, and finding mechanisms for encouraging a crowd to turn up. For example, if you think about, market moves, there's people who look at charts all day. So some of our players on Finance.vote just spend all day looking at charts, and are traders. So we essentially pay them to declare their market preference. And if we get enough good traders to do that, in theory, the aggregated signal might have some alpha in it. And we think that might be the case, which we're quite excited about.
Yeah, it sounds like very recent updates there, and the journey continues. So how do we go from Finance.vote, which in and of itself is very interesting? We could probably spend the whole hour on that. Yeah. But how do we go from that to FactoryDAO? And how they tie together?
It was our journey, really. We wanted to become a DAO. Given that I'd been obsessed in DAOs for many, many years, we thought basically what we want to do is create a DApp, and then go through the experience of turning that into a DAO and decentralizing the power of running this game. And really, there wasn't any of the tooling required that met our requirements. So we ended up building it ourselves. So we built an app for launching our own token. None of the launch pads, I just thought the launch pads were all sketchy as hell and didn't want anything to do with them. So we built our own launch pad, essentially, which most of those launch pad things devolved into this, pump the price to the point where the network's ridiculously overvalued, and then it just bleeds out for 8 months. So we built a system which has a price discovery auction on launch, and then bootstraps the AMM. And it was decentralized. We completely, via smart contracts and LP tokens, bootstrap an AMM completely non-custodially. We built our own system for vesting our own tokens, so no one had to trust us that we were going to get our tokens as the team and dump them into the market. So you didn't have to trust that the DAO treasury was fully liquid, controlled by a centralized team. So we built an app for that, and then we built an app for market making, so the DAO can control its liquidity mining program. And then we ended up building a whole governance system around using NFTs for decentralized governance, which again didn't exist. So it was just building the tools that we needed to be a DAO. And then we kind of, after about 18 months, realized, hold on a minute, lots of other people would benefit from this. And so we want to stitch it all into a protocol. And that's what FactoryDAO is. It's the open, permissionless protocol to launch a DAO.
Amazing. So what I hear is, not only did you build it for yourself, but you built it in not you, but you and your team and everyone that became part of this DAO put this together with what sounds like a strict adherence to permissionless systems. The kind of foundational rules there were no corners cut.
Yes, we care a lot about decentralization and trust minimization, and a lot of the mistakes that were learned the hard way in the last cycle. Lots of rug pulls and scams and teams dumping their tokens into the market and all that sort of stuff. We've always sort of cared about doing it in a trust minimized way. And now our job is to basically stitch it into we want to be a kind of like Uniswap for DAOs, where, you can end to end launch a token, build a market, have NFT governance, and have all your voting strategies set up and launch it permissionlessly.
Sounds amazing. Maybe this would be a good point to, if you can, screen share, and we could all take a look together, some visual aids here. Oh, look at that. That was fast. So you were ready. We've got
Absolutely.
FactoryDAO.xyz. Everyone can go there together right now.
Yep.
And as you say, to build, launch, and manage your DAO. This looks great.
That's it. So yeah, FactoryDAO.xyz or .org will get you to the same place. Essentially, what we are aiming to do, we think there's going to be a few core models for DAOs. So there's the token DAO, which is basically what we see mostly on Snapshot, right? It's a governance token, fungible token, token weighted voting. And then we actually think NFT based governance is going to be really big. So potentially teams like Aavegotchi could turn their NFTs into governance tokens and use them with our influence tool, which I'll show you in a bit. And then a combination of both. So FactoryDAO will have the Fact token, which will be a fungible token, and NFTs that do the kind of day-to-day management of the governance. And then the end game, I think, is what I call a meta DAO, which is where you have a overarching DAO structure with lots of sub DAOs that do very sort of domain specific things that use a combination of all of our tools. And yeah, so our tools at the moment, the ones we've got publicly accessible, our launch system is our launch your token. Bank, which I'll show you in a second, is our token vesting and token distribution tool. Yield is our staking and liquidity mining system. Mint is for launching NFT DAOs, and Influence is our voting system. So yeah, our goal now is we want to get to the point where it's all permissionless in a protocol. You don't even need to speak to us, and that's when we'll get 1,000 DAOs a day.
And that I like that goal. That is where we're going. Where it just
it's
that viral. Yeah, it's the viral level, right? It's intuitive, and everybody is launching one all together.
Exactly, and there's 20 million LLCs made a year. I think DAOs will be in that sort of order of magnitude. So yeah, this is where we started. This is finance.vote. At the moment, the sort of market window is live. You'll be able to, this is our sort of voting system. So you can vote on, like we've got a basket of crypto, stocks, commodities, fiat currencies. And the goal is to basically spend 100 voting credits on these things. So it's quadratic voting. So if you voted 5 times on Google being the top performer, you'd spend 25 of your credits, and you just spend them around thing. And yeah, the interesting thing is that for the last, we've got very close to predicting the winners for the last 4 ballots. So you can see we had silver as number 2 here. Bitcoin was predicted as the winner. Ethereum was predicted as the winner here. And then we had like DOT as second place. So there's some alpha in there, and we're working with our community to go in and sort of figure that stuff out. But yeah, as we built this thing, we need to mint SBTs. So you can come into this thing and mint soulbound tokens. So we built our own minting suite here, and you can see the sort of history of the mints that are coming out here. Kind of runs on an auction actually.
Interesting.
So that's our. So yeah, the Sybil resistance is a big issue with these things. So basically, this is at the moment, one of our SBTs is around 29 Matic, not hugely expensive. But what will happen if you buy this, it'll double to 60 and then decay down back to its base price. And that means if someone tries to buy a lot of tokens very quickly, the price goes exponential. And it's a kind of Sybil resistance tool. So that's our minting suite. This is Bank, which is not a bank. It's a token distribution system. And essentially what this does is distributes tokens on vesting schedules. So to the token to the second, if you want to distribute, 1 million tokens to someone over a 6-month period, you can lock them up into this, and you can see your progress through that vesting schedule on there. We do airdrops on this, so we can, do 1 million people can come and pick up some tokens.
Could I stop you there? When you talk about doing that many in an airdrop or maybe even a vesting
Yeah.
schedule, what about the gas? What kind of blockchains are we running on here? I understand Polygon should be one of them. Is that correct? And is it
That's right.
EVMs
We're
in
currently
general?
we're currently on Ethereum, Avalanche, Polygon, and Optimism.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, basically it costs pennies now to pick these tokens up, and you can distribute. Because we're using Merkle trees, we can put a vast amount of people in there, which is great. The fun twist we've added to Bank, which I think is going to play into the incentivization stuff. Essentially, if you're paying out your community in the native token, every time you do an airdrop, it's a bit of a dump race. You've got 10,000 people coming to pick up tokens. The person who gets in first gets the most money, and everyone who sells after depreciates the price of the token. So basically the vesting schedules allows you to manage the token velocity. Otherwise, you get stuck in this kind of scenario where you want to pay for work in the native token, and then none of the people vote for it because no one wants the price to go down.
Right.
So basically what this does is we can give you a dynamic vesting schedule where you'll get, let's say, 300,000 tokens if you stay in for longer, and you get less tokens the quicker you come out. So you set your own vesting schedule.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so you get a kind of token bonus for staying in longer and getting fewer tokens per day, which minimizes the sell pressure on the token itself. And then basically the DAO can vote on, who what these ranges are and control its token velocity, which I think is pretty interesting. And again, we've just taken this permissionless, so any DAO that wants to do any token distributions can come and use that for free. Basically, we take a tiny amount of fees in tokens as you distribute them.
That makes sense.
This is our staking solution. It's called Yield, and essentially what this does is distribute tokens to LPs. Classic liquidity mining with a few twists. This curve is the rate at which tokens are emitted into the LPs, so they come out in pulses, and that means the DAO can contribute how high and how long this pulse runs for. This is running for 2 weeks at the moment, and basically instead of it being a pro rata share, it's done in slots. So you can essentially, they're like little houses. We call them protocol properties, and this runs on Harberger taxes. So in order to take this slot, you would beat this deposit and beat the tax rate, and you would claim this slot.
Okay, say that one more time, because not everyone knows the I can't even pronounce it. The Harbinger taxes. This was a hot topic recently with Vitalik talking about the ENS domains as a potential candidate for this model.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of this model for a long time, and basically what this does is auction slots. So this will work for metaverse land. It'll work for NFTs. We do it for liquidity mining slots, and basically. What this is, you split the number of lots up into there's 50 slots. They're all occupied at the moment. But what you can do is come in and claim one of these slots by kicking someone out. So this person's occupying a slot for this little house, and they've deposited 100 LP tokens, and they've said they will burn 1 LP token per pulse, so one every 2 weeks. So that's a self-assessed tax, essentially. And
I see.
These LP tokens are like protocol and liquidity. They go to the DAO. So if I deposit 110 LP tokens and pay 2 per pulse, I can kick that person out and occupy their lot. And it's basically like a rolling auction on the emission for the DAO, earning the tokens, which is pretty cool.
Now, unlike an ENS domain with these 50 LP slots, those lots are all equal in value, right? They're all the same size. They're all access to this.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. It's just a rolling auction to be one of the 50, basically, in the
Exactly. So I occupy 3 of these lots and have done for quite a long time because I set quite a high pulse on it. So the high tax rate. So it's a kind of a game is how much of your LP tokens are you willing to donate to the DAO to convince other people not to kick you out, right? So you can actually come in here and put 0 tax in. There's some people paying a lot less to hold it. So it's some people have deposited 500 LP tokens and paying less tax and so on. And so you can see everyone's got a slightly variable APY for their slot based on how much they've deposited and how much tax they're paying.
I think it may not be the perfect tax system or auction system for every situation, but like you said, it can be a consideration for NFTs or metaverse land. In fact, just last week we pushed an update to the Gotchiverse where now you're able to host basically teleporters. They're called bounce gates. So you can host parties very easily at your parcel. And if you want to, you can charge it with glitter tokens, which is basically tokenized time. The more you charge, the higher you go to have like a banner ad on the main dashboard, basically saying, "Hey,
nice.
My parcel." And then the time it depletes because 1 glitter is worth 1 block time on Polygon, about 2.5 seconds. So literally, it's like burning them as you go down. It almost just what you described there reminds me of similar but different. But I think we could have gone with this kind of model just as well. It's quite interesting.
I'm super interested in auction mechanisms, and I think it's about negotiating value in a decentralized way. Basically always comes down to some kind of auction design, in my view. This is a standard staking pool. We built this thing called literally APY. And it's basically you deposit your tokens into a box and get paid to hodl, basically. But you can get paid up to 9 different tokens for being in this. So this persuades people to lock their tokens up. And then we can do stake-weighted voting with it and stuff, which is pretty cool. I showed you Mint earlier, and now we get onto our voting mechanism influence.
Now, as you go into influence here, just to break it up a bit, I want to make sure everyone from Aavegotchi DAO pays attention, especially here, because right now we're in the middle of a conversation about infrastructure for Aavegotchi DAO. We all rely on Snapshot. We love Snapshot. The strategies are flexible. I think we have maybe too many strategies going right now. We have 13 or more.
Oh, wow.
It's a lot. There's various NFTs with voting power and all these different things. But with influence, what I saw looking into it a bit is the potential for a much more thoughtful and ambitious approach to something, again, similar but different. So just very excited to see what exactly we're looking at here with the influence portion.
Yes. So influence is very much like Snapshot. Inspired by Snapshot even, so it uses digital signatures. It's off-chain for now. We have a plan to be able to turn it into an on-chain execution environment. But for now, it's basically like Snapshot, but explicitly optimized for NFTs. So this is my FET NFT, which is one of our governance identities. And again, highly optimized for quadratic voting. So I've set up a little fun vote here, which is what's the best NFT project. So obviously we're going to vote high on Aavegotchi. And you can see it's quadratic voting, so I vote 7 times, which means I've used 49 of my voting credits. If I vote 10 times,
we can give 1 or 2 to ENS. They're decent. They're trying their best.
ENS deserves some.
That's the beauty of quadratic, right? You get to balance and weight it's not just like one vote for one thing.
Exactly. So what you're doing here is basically balancing your preferences. So we want to vote 8 for Aavegotchi because we're obviously Aavegotchi bulls, but also, I like squiggles as well. And what you're doing is basically, delegating your preference across a list. So what you've done here is think about what your preferences are and communicate it in a sort of decentralized way. That's on draft at the moment, so I can't vote directly. But essentially, what you'll do here is vote, commit it to chain, and then everyone votes are aggregated. And I can show you some examples of where we've done this. We recently did the hackathon vote for ETH Berlin. So it works for huge amounts of projects as well. So this is great for when you've got many, many options that you might want to find a winner for.
Oh, wow. So many.
Because it's quadrat. Yeah, there was about 100 projects. So funnily enough, the winning project here was one that advertised and marketed within it. And what they marketed was, we'll give you all the prize money and share it out to everyone equally.
That's game theory.
That's game theory right there. So they won. So you can see that each of these has links over to their portfolio. So you could go and jump into what each of these products did. This was the winning hack. This runs on SBTs as well. And you can see the aggregated votes. We had 241 voters. And this is the distribution of all of the different, which I just love this chart. It's basically the consensus of what everyone thought the projects, how cool the projects were. And the extra cool thing that we do is basically we can aggregate opinions as well as votes.
Okay.
So we can sort by, this specific project. And now we've got this mixed methods approach to collecting data, both quantitative and qualitative. So this is voting as a kind of collective sense-making, collective decision-making tool. So each time you do a vote, you're not just finding out what people's preferences are, you're finding out why they care about that stuff.
So Tornado Docs looks interesting. Could we take a chance and click on it? And then we'd see the comments.
Yeah.
When people voted, they would leave comments on that, basically.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, people are just leaving, fairly basic feedback. It takes a while. One of the things and you can see some people are leaving really detailed feedback, and we're looking at building like incentive mechanisms that, pay people for leaving good, high quality feedback.
Right.
So yeah, really this becomes a kind of collective decision-making tool. Our goal is to integrate the full foruming capabilities into this. So you basically, it's got your forum, it's got your voting, it's got your decision making, and eventually on-chain execution. It all runs on IPFS. The front ends are decentralized. We're looking at doing something with Filecoin, so we can have a truly decentralized, censorship-resistant governance space. So Discord can go down, everything can go down, and this will still be up.
So in this example, ETH Berlin, you have a lot of potential things to vote for. Sometimes in Aavegotchi now, we only have 2 or 3 potential outcomes, right? We typically write a proposal. If it hits quorum, we go upgrade it to a core proposal, and then it basically gets re-voted with higher stakes. It's like idea, okay, are we sure we want to do it? 2-step thing. What would this look like? Do you have any examples of a situation where, it's more, not maybe binary, but it's 2 or 3, 4 options, and there's pretty rigorous debate around it. Maybe this could, how could this work?
So let me think. We've got a number of strategies on here. We can do classic, essentially select an option binary voting as well. So you only get 1 vote per NFT on 3 items. The same, let's see if I've got any of these open.
In theory, though, I could be in a situation where it's like I see 4 options. I feel very strongly about one of them, but, I know it may not win. And so I also want to allocate some of my voting power to the second best option out of,
yes. So the quadratic voting will work with 3 items, 4 items, the same. Trying to think we've got, this is an interesting one. Again, you'll tend to find more items make it come in once you've got the options, and you always basically find the most important issue. So you kind of always reach a decision. This one basically determined what we call a governance drop. So we gave out 10 million tokens for these different actions. people who turn up to vote, to the DAO leaders. These are people who hold their NFTs for doing testing work, for turning up, supporting that kind of thing.
This seems like one of the first votes you would do. You're saying governance drop. That's a very interesting term.
Yeah.
Maybe we can linger on that a bit. So those all look like different titles or roles in the DAO, and you're assigning those roles via a governance DAO governance drop. Is that right?
Yeah. So basically, these at the time were basically just arrived at through dialogue. So what's the action we want to incentivize in the DAO? Mm-hmm. Who should get an airdrop, basically. So via our bank application, people who's completed a task from the job board, and they will have got paid some stables for that as well. So it's like a token top up. Introducer, this is person who's introduced us to form what we call a DAO alliance. This is just you've got one of our FET IDs, very passive one. Then we've got people who are a DAO leader, who again get paid in stables, but they get some extra tokens. And this is what we call our vote mining rewards. So everyone who's turned up to vote gets some tokens. So we thought this was really useful. Most of this stuff we can derive from on-chain. So this was people who voted in the prediction market. This is people who voted in the influence application. And then we can basically automate, frequent payouts to an open-ended list of tasks. So we're kind of fully decentralizing the payout distribution stack. So we've got one of these live at the moment. So what we fairly recently built is what we call our submissions tool. So what goes into the vote, instead of like essentially the core team saying these are the 10 tags of things that we'll pay out for, we've now got an open-ended submission system. So I can essentially put anything. So I think we should pay people for NFT holders.
Right.
And then this allows us to have a very open-ended submission system where, that's just popped in there. And now I can vote these up and down sort of Reddit style.
Okay.
And potentially curate 1,000 suggestions and then push them to a quadratic vote, and we'll find the top suggestion. So I call this decentralized content curation. You can upload video, tweets, memes, pictures. You can run meme competitions on this kind of stuff. And you basically always find a winner. This, in combination of the governance drop, we can completely decentralize the whole end-to-end process of who gets paid for what.
Right. So like the results here, it says the voter influence, they got the most votes. So basically voters were the winners in this particular situation.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, perhaps.
Yes.
But yeah, so and what this does is split the pie. So we distributed 10 million tokens. That means 1.329 million went to the people who voted across our governance tools.
Oh, that's a great way to kind of put a bow tie on this. Like, what does it mean? It means, look at that pie chart right there. That's how those 10 million were split up.
Exactly. So it basically splits the pie across the open-ended list of tasks. So normally there's this huge wrangling around, how much this task is worth. This gets rid of that because consensus derives how much that task was worth. And, if you do this every month or so, if people thought, that wasn't paid enough last time, they can vote more on it next time. And it's just a constant iterative process of finding out what to pay people. And it's all derived consensus, and it's a way of completely decentralizing work, basically.
Right. We're getting into that aspect of it. And like with Aavegotchi DAO, we're at a certain point where we want to start opening up some of the funding and the treasury, putting it to work. And it seems like one way to do that.
Yeah, so it's a great way for running competitions or even grants. You know, it's like submit a task that you have completed. So our sort of next goal is to use our NFT identities to build a kind of DAO portfolio. So a bit like our submission tool here, people can submit a whole portfolio of work. So we can have a, you know, what have you done for the DAO this month? And you submit the things that you've done. And then in theory, the whole DAO could vote on what's the best work. And you get paid proportionally.
You look back, you say, okay, and then there's probably a certain slice for everyone who just voted, as we saw earlier, the DAO voters. So
exactly.
like, I'm incentivized to review all of these, allocate my voting power to a certain number of them, and go from there. Exactly. So I love the iterative aspect to this, how it kind of scales as large as you want it to go.
Exactly. It's what you're looking for in I think in DAO tools is things that can hyperscale. So there's this idea of hyperscale in server ideas where depending on demand, things can scale up and scale down instantaneously. Having managers to review everyone's work and see if it meets a kind of like standard doesn't scale. Whereas having a huge stack of submitted work and having a whole group peer review everyone's work does scale. And it means you don't have to have managers. So a big part of the DAO philosophy for me is self-autonomy, which means you don't have a line manager bossing you around. You turn up and you're paid proportional to the merit and your contribution that you've done to the DAO.
Yeah, you made one of the tweets I read early on, or a couple months ago. I think you said, you know, if your DAO looks like a company, then you might as well just start a company. So I think this is kind of what you're getting at here, is like we have the potential to do something different and potentially very different. You'll see different products emerge and different results. So
exactly. If you're using top down authoritarian governance, why not just be an LLC? I don't quite see the point. And you just like, you know, there's all the kind of complexity around regulations and people coming and going. And there's some people just, and I think that is a paradigm. I think there will be on-chain companies, but their tokens will probably be securities and they'll be regulated differently. And that's probably where I see the sort of delineation happening.
Yeah, it's quite powerful what you've described here, especially the hyperscaling and just a peer review system, P2P, applied to, you know, iteratively over time. So this is a great overview. I think an influence is very powerful in and of itself. What you've accomplished with finance, say that name again. I don't want to get it wrong. Finance.vote. And of course, everything else you went through here in the tooling side, you could really bootstrap a community, an idea, a community around an idea very, very quickly. And I think there may be some more here for Aavegotchi DAO as well. So before we go, any final thoughts here? We're kind of at time. If, you know, what's your kind of thoughts on, you know, where you're going with this? Is there anything else we should be looking forward to with FactoryDAO that we haven't talked about?
I mean, we're basically, what we're going to do, hopefully in the next few months, contingent on some funding conversations, is start this process of turning all this into a permissionless protocol. At the moment, there's quite a bit of hand-holding required to help you set up these various tools. Our goal is to basically completely decentralize that end-to-end, and we want to do that over the next 18 months and launch into a fully decentralized protocol that's completely governed by token holders. But the other thing we want to do is hire a lot of DAO leaders. So essentially, we are a DAO that builds DAOs. So we are looking to find a lot of people who are interested in being part of the DAO sort of movement, who want to help other people launch DAOs. So DAOs are so new and so complicated and so strange and unwieldy at the moment that a lot of people need a lot of help. So our theory is that the best and most successful DAOs will have a lot of assistance certainly through the launch life cycle, but also in an ongoing fashion. So we will pair people up with DAO leaders to take them through the whole launch process. So yeah, we're looking for people who want to do that with us. So if you're interested in becoming a DAO leader, just at the moment, drop me a DM on Twitter, or if you're interested in launching a DAO or using any of our tools, just drop me a DM and we can have a chat about it. And yeah, but eventually we want to hire lots of DAO leaders. Any money that's made from the launching of DAOs goes into hiring more DAO leaders. So we're trying to build this kind of self-propagating DAO. We just want to see 1,000 DAOs a day. So that's the way we can think of scaling it.
Scaling it up, and you have a solid foundation here, so I don't see why this will not go to that 1,000 DAOs a day and beyond.
I hope so.
That number you mentioned about number of LLCs per year that are created, it makes 1,000 DAOs a day look like nothing. So we're so early, exactly. And yet the work you are doing and Aavegotchi DAO and all the DAOs, it's key that we keep pushing forward and pushing the envelope. And so that's why I see here.
Yeah, absolutely. No. Completely agree.
Thank you for your time, Dr. Nick. Everyone should follow FactoryDAO. Check out factorydao.xyz or .org, I guess. They both work. And definitely check out Dr. Nick and follow him on Twitter. He's got a lot of insights there every day. And thank you so much for your time. I hope we see you in Aavegotchi DAO, and I hope we start using some of these tools in the near future.
Yeah, anytime.
All right. Thank